Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, as you know, an awful lot has been happening all over the world, some rather more interesting than others, and some rather more important than others. But today we are going to focus on things that are, well, we're going to focus on trivial people who possibly have a momentous, shall we say, consequences to their actions. And I hope you have been gagging with delight at the snatches of photographs of Lily White, Lily, and Lily White Archie, which of course is perfectly as it ought to be. After all, Archie Bunker was, if I remember correctly, a nice working class guy. So it's appropriate. And we've been seeing pictures of the Lily White babies that evidently Meghan was so upset that people might have actually thought that they would be, shall we say, dark? Well, they certainly are, that's for sure. And may I make a point that some people keep on commenting upon? They say that Meghan's children, if she had been the, shall we say, the originator of them, this is YouTube, so one needs to be careful, that those children would have kinky hair the way she does. That's not so. I have a friend who is a black Jamaican. I mean, when I say black, I mean black. She's very beautiful, but she's definitely very black. And we were all at lunch the other day with her sister, her sons, whose father is French, and her granddaughter, who is therefore 3/4 white. And the child has absolutely dead straight hair. So the child is 3/4 white, 1/4 black, and being Jamaican, even though she's very dark and very beautiful, but she's very dark-skinned, I would imagine she has some white blood as well, because I think there are very few black Jamaicans that don't have white blood. But anyway, whatever, the child is definitely 3/4 white, looks white, and has dead straight hair. It's as straight as mine, or as straight as Meghan's now is, except I don't straighten mine, Meghan straightens hers. So it's a misnomer to think that because a child is the product of a mixed race union and it is 3/4 white, and Meghan's children are more than 3/4 white, because Meghan's mother is herself mixed race. Meghan's mother is not black. Meghan's mother is cafe au lait, very light on the milk, but very definitely got milk in the mix somehow. I've done the research on her background, and she definitely has a hefty percentage of Caucasian. So the fact that those children have straight hair, one in Jamaica, they used to, I don't know if they still do, but they used to call good hair as opposed to naughty Ed. Meghan has naughty Ed, but those children have good hair. And it is a perfectly natural phenomenon. So those who think that it isn't, please, it is. Okay? So now we'll plunge in with what PQR says, Lady C, so much is happening all over the place with Prince Harry and Meghan. There are so many different theories about them. They're grifters, they're con artists and hustlers. No, they're not. They're political agents who are being run by the British and American deep state. Then I wonder if you could help me unravel the connection between Harry and Meghan's political activities, their commercial activities, and whether they're really political agents or just on the make. Okay, I'm going to break it down for you. And I'm going to break it down reasonably thoroughly. I will say, in my opinion, Harry is a useful idiot. Meghan is an ambitious hustler who is a rampant elitist and one of the greatest social climbers and lion hunters as well as opportunists that God put on this earth. And she would use anything, and she has found it convenient to use woke politics. Is she a plant? I know an awful lot of people think she is. I know that she has sucked up to, and let's stick it at sucking up to, various people in the Democrat Party, including Monsieur Fitzgerald, who, or was it Fitzpatrick? I think it's Fitzpatrick anyway, Fitz whatever it is, who is a staunch Democrat. I think Meghan, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again, I think Meghan is a very opportunistic, very ambitious hustler. However, there are really interesting connections, and I'm going to try to explain the connections and why people think that she is a plant. Now, I will say at this stage that Meghan is also supposed to have told somebody who told me that she is a believer in fortune tellers, as was Diana. And remember, Meghan is Diana Mach too. Meghan is channeling Diana. Now, I don't know whether Diana told her this or not. I suspect she hasn't yet gilded the lily to that extent. But she evidently says that she has been given a glimpse of the future, and that William and his family will cease to exist as a result of a helicopter crash, which would mean that she and Harry would be the next king and queen. However, she didn't say that she and Harry would be the next king and queen. She implied that her fate is that she is going down in history as one of the great movers and shakers of all time, and that she is going down in history as having played a fundamental part in changing the monarchy. Well, I don't know how this is measuring up with, because I don't also know if it's related to Uri Geller's prediction that he thinks that King Charles III will be the last British king. I'm skeptical of such claims. Let me put it that way. Because I actually read what Uri Geller said. so that I would be able to cover this subject thoroughly. And Uri Geller actually says that there's room for change, that it may not be 100%. Well, I have to tell you, a flash is a flash is a flash is a flash, just as how a rose is a rose is a rose. Remember? Alice B. Toklas, Gertrude Stein? Well, I need to not over-reconcile what I have been told, because I have to say it is my opinion that if William and Catherine and those children, or just William and the children, it doesn't need to be Catherine, should end up not being here as a result of an accident, I do not think Harry will ever accede to the throne. I think that the British populace would be absolutely in flagrant rebellion against the possibility. There are enough people of a political persuasion that Harry and Meghan have been encouraging. And it has to be said to an extent that Charles and William have been encouraging, who are not particular monarchists. And I think at that point there would be such a hue and cry that there would actually be a referendum called as to whether Harry should accede to the throne. And I think the vote would go tremendously against him being on the throne. And I do not think that we would be given a choice as to whether one of the others would be on the throne. Because at the moment, the other who would then be on the throne, presuming that Andrew is dead, would be Beatrice. She doesn't have a high enough profile. She's not popular enough. I think it would be a situation akin at best to what happened in Italy in 1946, when there was a referendum about keeping the monarchy. And because of Vittorio Emanuele III's association with Mussolini, and he abdicated too late, and his son Umberto had only been king for a few days, weeks really, that the Italian people are meant to have a vote. It was a very close run thing. And according to the official results of the referendum, the Republicans won and the monarchists lost. In fact, I have always heard that the Republicans lost and the monarchists won by a slender majority. But there was a little bit of, shall we say, chicanery. I don't think there need to be much chicanery in this instance. I think it really would be the end of the monarchy. I cannot see people accepting Harry and Meghan after all that's happened. And Meghan and Harry would never stand aside to allow somebody more acceptable to the British people to accede to the throne, because Meghan has said, according to what I was told, that Harry has his birthright that must be respected. In other words, she believes, supposedly, that William and the family will cease to exist, and she and Harry will be king and queen. That will be when Mr. Piggles flies. Let me put it that way. So now, to answer the question more, since let's just cover it comprehensively. I think there is little doubt that Meghan is a political activist. She is, I think, also a political opportunist. I think she is the worst sort of Democrat that exists. And I know many very good Democrats who are wonderful people, but there are also the worst sort of Democrats, are the most rampant elitists. They are money grubbing. They talk about community and the people, and they rarely are anything but for the people. And I think she's that sort of Democrat. And she has swung Harry in that direction. It's all artificial. We care so deeply, but it's all so elitist. Now remember, I went to school in America partly. My sisters live in America. Many of my best and oldest friends are American, some from the absolute top drawer of the United States of America. People like the Rutherfords and the Biddles, and etc., etc. I won't go into any more names. But I'll mention those because they've been mentioned before. And the fact of the matter is that Americans are much more elitist than Europeans and the British. And it's an across the board thing because it's natural because America is a younger country. And so, an 18-year-old pumps more hormones than an 87-year-old or a 57-year-old. Let's put it that way in cultural terms. I think that Meghan has orchestrated the whole thing. I think she has been cultivating people of influence via the Democratic Party, because to be Republican, she would have had to have had either a lineage or actual accomplishments. To be Democrat, she didn't need to have any. She could just be an actress who was gonna mouth the rubbish that she's been mouthing, and people would go along with it. While if she had been a Republican, there'd have been more of a need for her to actually have results as opposed to all show and no go. And I think she is extremely ambitious. Harry is extremely vain. I think they are a lethal combination. I think that she has used all of his disturbed ambitions and misconceived perceptions, and I think she has used all of his character flaws to make him think that they would be world leaders. And that's what, while she was going to make a lot of money and also be a world leader. Now, they have attached themselves to some very significant organizations that are extremely important if indeed Harry became involved. Because remember, Harry is a British prince. Whatever else he is, he's a British prince. And in particular, I am referring to the Aspen Institute. Now, I have done my research into Harry's not only links with the Aspen Institute, but the concerns that people in this country have about Harry's links with the Aspen Institute and other organizations of that ilk. I'm now referring to, and I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm referring to people of stature, substance, and influence in this country, who understand that our interests as a state come first. Harry doesn't understand this. Harry doesn't understand that friendly powers are never going to trust each other 100%. It is not in any one state's interest to serve the interest of the other state to such an extent that the state actually hands over all information, etc. Harry is regarded as, and through Harry, Meghan, they are regarded as dangers to the security of this country. Harry has recently said that the reason why he was deprived of his security was that the British authorities, the British establishment, however you want to put it, the royal family, etc., wanted to force him to come back to live in the United Kingdom because they wanted him here. That's not true. On the contrary, one of the reasons why he was given a choice of half in, half out was that Meghan's political machinations, as well as her commercialization of her royal status, but it's a twofold thing. Meghan's political machinations, which were too pronouncedly partisan in terms of the left-wing Democratic Party as an element of the Democrats in the United States of America, was, and also some of the people that she mixes with and had been mixing with, who are viewed with grave suspicion in certain quarters, not only in this country but elsewhere. I'm referring in particular to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, and to a lesser extent Bill Clinton, do not have pristine reputations. Now, of course, they are given every honor and they are given every courtesy, but nobody in the British established order, and I'm not referring to the royal family now, I'm referring to, let's leave it at a certain sort of person. They understood that Meghan's activism was, first of all, counterproductive to the interests of the British nation, and secondly, that Meghan's boastfulness and Harry's loquacity, because Harry is very loquacious. Harry and Meghan are braggarts. And one of the reasons why it has been in the interest of the British authorities to cut off Harry's security was that the security came along with, shall we say, state secrets and privileged information that then Meghan and Harry could boastfully leak to whomever they pleased, and evidently would and did. So there have been real concerns even before Meghan and Harry left about the trustworthiness of their conduct. Now, Does that mean that Meghan is a plant? I don't think that means Meghan is a plant. I think that means that people suss that Meghan was a danger and that Harry is a danger as well. That's one of the reasons why the security was removed from them. Another reason was that there was no need for it. But Harry and Meghan actually, in doing what they did, they created the situation that allowed the British state, to stop a blabbermouth prince and his pushy, boastful, arrogant wife from possibly giving information to supposed allies that would actually be to the detriment of the British state. The Aspen Institute has been also a feature in all of this. Now, the Aspen Institute is elitist to the nth degree. There is an element in this country, in Whitehall, that is very in tune with the people who are on the board of trustees or who are administrators, and they are two entirely different things, and I will get to that in a minute. The board and the trustees actually cover a wide range of people. The Aspen Institute is, in some quarters, regarded as desirable, and in other quarters regarded as a huge danger. Harry, of course, is now one of the commissioners on the board, but I'm going to get to that in a moment. The Aspen Institute is viewed by people who are not entirely in sympathy with its ambitions to violate the First Amendment and introduce censorship to an unacceptable level, as, and I'm going to quote what I was told, it's a latter-day reminiscent of Henry VII's Star Chamber. It's elitist to the nth degree, it's ruthless to the nth degree, and it has an awful lot of people who are very eminent, who are a part of it, and it also has people who are extremely dangerous, evidently, who are a part of it. Now, I'll do the trustees first. I think there are 62 trustees, not 63, 62 trustees. The trustees are chaired by Margot Pritzker. The Pritzkers are a billionaire Jewish family who own the Hyatt hotels. Her husband, Thomas Pritzker, he created the Pritzker Architecture Prize, which is considered the profession's highest honor. They do wonderful work for the Jewish community. They're great supporters of Israel. They are great philanthropists in the American tradition. Practically everybody associated with the Aspen Institute, whether as a trustee or a commissioner, is somehow elite in his or her field. Many of them are billionaires, most of the others are multimillionaires. Or they are, it is an organization that is a rich man's and rich woman's club, where rich men and rich women think because they have money and privilege that automatically gives them not only the right but the duty to reconfigure society so that their image of it will be realized. So it's a danger where certain people are concerned. I'm going to mention one or two people who are members of it to show you the lightweightedness and the heavyweightedness and the celebrity and the status of it. You have Queen Noor, who's the Dowager Queen of Jordan. She's American. She was born Lisa Halaby. Her father was the head of Pan American, and Najib Halaby was his name. And she's very much a respected person. She's a great friend of King Charles. I know of events that have taken place at Buckingham Palace where she has shown up in the King's party, even though she was not scheduled to attend. I'll use one example. There was a concert given after Ruth Lady Fermoy died. And it was in honour of Ruth Lady Fermoy, Diana, Princess of Wales's grandmother. And Queen Noor showed up with the then Prince Charles. She listed was Princess Margaret of Hesse and the Rhine, whose late husband had been the head of the House of Hesse. Prince Philip's family were descendants of the Hesses. And Princess Margaret of Hesse and the Rhine was listed as being there. Not Queen Noor, but Queen Noor showed up. There is James Manica, who is a senior vice president of Google, responsible for technology and society. So he's one of the heavy hitters. Also, it helps that he's black because, of course, they need to have diversity, and they do have diversity. There's Laura Lauder, Mrs. Gary Lauder. Now, I knew old Estee Lauder slightly. She was one of those rampant social climbers that God ever put on this earth. And she was all over my sister-in-law, Jeannie Campbell, Lady Jean Campbell, who'd been married to Norman Mailer, like a rash. And the Lauders are very much into philanthropy. And the Laura and Gary Lauder Family Venture Philanthropy Fund, again, a lot of work they do for Israel. And they do other things as well. Very worthy, very commendable, very grand and elitist. And then you have Mercedes Bass, Sid Bass's ex-wife. Now, Mercedes Bass has a very interesting reputation. Mercedes Bass is actually a very grand Iranian. She was her father died when she was very young, and her mother remarried to one of the Empress Faradiba's cousins. So she was known as Mercedes Tavakoli Diba, but she wasn't born into the Diba family. But her stepfather's mother was a Qajar princess. Before the Pahlavis ascended the throne of Iran, the peacock throne, the Qajars were the ruling family. Now, one of my great friends, he's dead now, Sheikh Nizam Hazal, his mother had been a Qajar princess. And I know several of the imperial family, many of whom ended up having Qajar blood, because when the late Shah's father, Reza Shah as he was known, when he acceded to the throne, he made sure that his progeny married into the previous dynasty. So, and in fact, Empress Farah's family was connected to the old Qajar dynasty. Well, Mercedes Bass is renowned for the sharpness of her elbows, as she has ensured that she remained at the peak of society. She was married to a diplomat called Kellogg, who was not one of the Kellogg's, but he was very well off. And then she met Sid Bass, who was a billionaire, married to Anne, who was very much a member of the American social set, great friends with Dominique Dunn, on the best dressed list, etc. So this gives you a flavor of the type of person who is on the Aspen Institute as a trustee. So you have Mercedes Bass, who of course ultimately divorced Sid Bass and ended up keeping all the houses that she could, etc., etc. So is she a heavy hitter? Well, I think we should ask Conrad Black and his wife about Mercedes Bass. Because Mercedes Bass, when Conrad Black, I don't know if you know who I'm speaking about, he owned the Telegraph, Lord Black, and he was sent to prison for a crime he never committed, and he was ultimately pardoned. It was a huge setup, done really for virtue signaling at the highest or level, so that it would play well with the press, and also because he was right wing, it would bring him down. And Mercedes Bass evidently had a part to play in this. So now that's the Board of Trustees, 62. Now we have the commissioners. There are 3 co-chairmen, and I'm sorry, I don't say chairs, I say chairmen. Who doesn't like it? I'm afraid will just have to bear with me, because to me, it's the chair is occupied by the chairman. So it's either chairman or madam chairman. And then you have 13 commissioners, of whom Harry is one. Another is Catherine Murdoch, who is Rupert Murdoch's very left-wing daughter-in-law, whose husband has been, to a large extent, cut out from the Murdoch empire because his politics are not acceptable to his father, nor would Catherine's be. I think you might be getting the drift as to the complexion of the people on the Aspen Institute. Another one is Chris Krebs. Chris Krebs now is a really very interesting person, because Chris Krebs is the former United States Director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the CIA, and he was dismissed by President Trump at the time of the last election, not this last one, the one before, where Trump lost and Biden won. And now maybe you begin to see why it was dangerous as far as the British authorities were concerned, that Harry and Meghan would have access to privileged information that they could then hand on to people who it would not necessarily be in our interests to have all the information handed on to. You know, it's very naive of people to think that because states are allies, that they should share everything. It's rather like husbands and wives who cheat, and in the traditional sense, don't share everything. Oh no, darling, I'd never, absolutely never look at another man. Never, I'd never cheat on you, as they're cheating left, right, and centre. You're selective about the information that you share. Well, of course, if you have a motor mouth and a braggart and a dimwit in the mix. So I hope that answers that question. So we're going to have to wrap this up reasonably quickly, because I had to answer that thoroughly to cover all of the terrain for you to understand why, because, you know, just saying it in 3 sentences isn't giving you actual insight into what has been going on and why it has been going on. But so let's whiz through 1 or 2 other questions. Leslie Boschel says, Dear Lady Colin, have you heard if this is true? The recent excuse Harry has given to the court as to why he must have the security that he is insisting upon. He actually believes the royal family had his security removed in order to prevent him and his wife from leaving the UK. The Sussexes were so popular, the royal family didn't want to lose them. Am I the only one who thinks that both Harry and Meghan are becoming more and more delusional, manipulative, and a concern as to how far they will go to get what they want and feel they are entitled to? Well, I sort of covered that. Meghan and Harry were deemed to be sufficiently dangerous in terms of their sympathies and affiliations and their statements and their irresponsible behavior, which of course has only been compounded in terms of confirmation in the 5 or 6 years that they've been out of the royal family has 5 years. 5 years. So, they wanted them either in or out, and they didn't want them if they were not in. They didn't want them to have access to any of the privileged information that goes along with IPP status. And they were actually delighted to have them out. Harry and Meghan caused nothing but problems where William and Catherine were concerned. They caused nothing but problems at the palace. They were huge, huge mischief makers. And the Queen said, the late Queen, oh, they're much loved members of the family, blah, blah, blah. My understanding is she would have preferred that they had remained here had they been behaving as they ought to have been behaving. But everything she had tried to reel them in, and that the palace had tried to reel them in, hadn't worked, including giving them the presidency and vice presidency of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust. And what did they do? They violated it to such an extent that they spun around and got one of their cohorts in their television show to say that it was effectively the white man's version of ripping off the black man and was Empire 2.0, and that it was an elaborate con to seize the natural assets of black countries for the enrichment of white Britons. So, Endless Student says, I'm reading the Diana, Princess of Wales book by you, Lady C. Well, I wrote 2, may I say. My first book was Diana in Private, The Princess Nobody Knows. My second book, which I think is a better book, just generally speaking, was called The Real Diana. So I don't know which book you're speaking about, but I'll continue. It's almost as if Harry and Meghan have read it and are following tactics to mess with the royal family. Like a blueprint. I can't believe how many things Meghan is doing that sounds like a direct copy. Maybe she believes because Diana, Princess of Wales, became the most famous woman in the world, much loved, that this will also work for her. Well, I have been told by people close to Meghan that she actually has used the real Diana as a template for simulation. And the truth is, I wrote the book so long ago, I don't really remember what I said in it. So I really don't remember because I wrote it nearly 30 years ago. 1997, I wrote it. So 28 years ago. And so I really don't remember what I wrote. But several people have commented publicly, and 1 or 2 people who know Meghan well have said that she actually has used it as a Bible. Now, that's really interesting because one of my other books was credited as being used as a Bible by Tiger Woods' wife when they were getting divorced. She said she used Empress Bianca as a Bible so that she would know how to negotiate her way into a good divorce. Obviously, she made sure that she was gonna be a successful a divorcee, as Lily Safra had been a widow, because the book was not about Diana, Princess of Wales. What Meghan does not seem to realize is that Diana, had she not died, would have ended up traducing herself. She was well on the way to doing so. Now, in fairness to Diana, we now know that Martin Bashir had lied to her and played on her paranoia, as Prince William has said. And she was paranoid. But, even paranoics can end up having their paranoia exaggerated to really destructive lengths, which is what happened with Diana and Martin Bashir. But even without Martin Bashir, she would have done a lot of what she did. She didn't really regret, she regretted the consequences of her Bashir interview, the Panorama interview, but she didn't regret some of what she did that other people condemned her for. So when she died, she was really, I've often said it, she was working herself into the position of being the Zsa Gabor of the royal family. In other words, a glamorous but ludicrous creature. And, some of what she did that is now regarded as commendable, for instance, the landmines. The government was furious about it because Diana was in danger of sabotaging as a result of her landmine activities, an international treaty that various governments all over the world had been working on for years and were close to concluding. And there Diana jumps in and is creating havoc. So the reality is Diana made a lot of mistakes, some of which she tried to claw back by the end of her life, others of which she was perpetuating. Diana was rarely on the route to being a celebrity. Mohammed Fayed was funding her in her charity work. He had bought Julie Andrews' house for her and Dodi Fayed to live in after they got married. Now, whether they got married or not never happened, so it's a moot point that they would have, but they certainly intended to get married and were discussing getting married. And I don't care what Rosa Monckton says. Rosa Monckton had been actually dumped by Diana after she and Diana went on Chrysanthi Lemos's, well, actually it was Panagiotis, her husband's boat, which Chrysanthi lent Diana the boat, and they went on it, and she was undermining the relationship with Dodi. And Diana told somebody who told me, who was a friend of mine, Middle Eastern friend of mine, incidentally, that Rosa Monckton was clearly against Dodi because he was an Arab, and she was married, according to Diana, to a Jew, and therefore that she was outraged at Rosa Monckton's impertinence in the way she was speaking. But Diana was very canny. Diana would listen not really respond, and cut you off, which is exactly what she did with Rosa Mountain. And except that she died, and so Rosa has now been able to let everybody think that, oh, well, we're such great friends and we were always going to be great friends. Utter rubbish. Utter rubbish. And Diana had nothing against anybody being Jewish, by the way. So it wasn't anti-Semitism, but she certainly didn't like the fact that Rosa was using really what she felt was anti-Arab techniques. And also Diana loved the fact that she had private yachts, private planes at her beck and call. So if Meghan is following Diana's game plan as has been recounted by me in The Real Diana, she's made a huge mistake, because I recount Diana's mistakes. And if she's doing it, she should stop, because look at where it got Diana. I mean, had Diana not died, she would have ended up being so unpopular. She would have ended up being as divisive as Meghan has ended up being. And it would have been dangerous, because her son, William, was one day going to be king. Although, of course, depending on what prediction Meghan believes, maybe she's going to go down in history as a woman who brought down the British monarchy. Now, that's an accomplishment, isn't it? And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in, so I will know what terrain you would like me to be covering with you on your behalf. Thank you. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.